professors, I think, every once in a while might have to actually clean the restroom. But still, you're going to find situations in which, when we balance for desirability in this workplace, it still was far less desirable than we balanced for desirability in this work. That is a form of sacrifice. That is a form of greater sacrifice. And the system says that entitles you to greater compensation. And you are correct that just balancing inside workplaces doesn't eliminate the possibility that you're going to have some pretty serious lack of balances between very different kinds of workplaces. I mean, one thing in particular I can think of is there are workplaces where, you know, it's just a lot more dangerous. There are dangerous jobs out there. There are workplaces that have more dangerous jobs, and there are workplaces where there's really no danger. And, you know, working at a dangerous job where there's some risks, that is a form of sacrifice that this system says warrants and merits extra compensation for anybody that's actually doing that. And so that would be in principle. So one term economists have for this is sort of compensating wage differentials for jobs that aren't desirable. Yeah, that's actually exactly what the entire system believes in. The entire system believes in compensating wage differentials, that's the one thing that is fair. There's extra compensation for jobs that nobody wants, for people who carry out those tasks. And just balancing within workplaces doesn't necessarily take care of all that.
Your book either, but I was thinking along the talk, how would you, because you didn't address that, how would you think in how the transition will be? Because without avoiding revolution or political radicalization, because even, I don't know, socialism or capitalism is, the state is ruling by the market or by money anyway. So how will you fight that idea, and how theoretically could be the transition?
Okay. When I wrote this book, I was writing mostly in between 2000 and 2005. It was published in 2005. You can think back to 2005. Those were very conservative times. And when I wrote that book, I basically was saying, look, nobody should be under any illusion that we're about to replace global capitalism with participatory eco-socialism in the near future. I mean, it's important to be realistic, and we're a long way away. And there's an easy way to tell when you're a long way away. This system that we're talking about, isn't this a system that's profoundly democratic? So isn't this a system that can't possibly come into being until a significant majority of the population is least favorably disposed to trying something along these lines that's different? And are we any place close to having that kind of support for system change? No. So this system, something like this can't come into being. I would argue that no desirable, significant social change can come into being unless it comes into being with the democratic support. Because it's not desirable if it doesn't have that. It's not going to work, and it's not going to be desirable. So I'm under no illusions that we are within a year or two. Now, I actually think, a lot has happened since 2005. The existing system, in 2005, ruling elites had a lot of credibility still. In 2005, sort of the standard neoliberal story had a lot of credibility. There were very few people questioning it. Anybody that was questioning it was pretty much marginalized. Now, there's been a rather dramatic change in the last 4 years because they've screwed up. They've screwed up really badly. And they show no signs of correcting what they're doing. They have unleashed the greatest economic crisis in 5 generations. And they haven't changed a damn thing they're doing. The financial system is actually more fragile now than it was before the crisis, the financial crisis. The recession is getting worse in Europe. It's getting worse in the United States again. They have absolutely no solution for that. Well, there are solutions for that, but the powers that be are not putting those in place. So we already have achieved something that I didn't think would ever happen quite this fast in 2005. There's already a lot more questioning going on out there about this really doesn't look so good. We should start thinking about alternatives. And we've talked about this with people in the organization that's sort of hosting my trip to England and here and then to Finland, which is the International Organization for Participatory Society. We have noticed that there's a lot more interest in people wanting to know about this idea. There's also a lot of really bad ideas that people weren't interested in that are now floating around out there that get a lot of interest. In a time when sort of the authorities that be lose credibility, there's sort of a vacuum for ideas that were never going to be considered to get much attention to fill, and maybe 9 out of those 10 ideas are pretty crackpot. That's what I happen to think about a lot of the ideas going on out there about negative growth, I think is idiocy. The sort of ideas about, well, let's eliminate central banks and let's not have money with debt. Well, God help us if you eliminate central banks and you haven't nationalized the financial industry. And there's no such thing as money without debt. That's what money is. So there's a lot of stupid ideas floating around out there that a lot of people are very interested and exciting about. And that wasn't happening 5 years ago because, the standard authorities had more authority 5 years ago. So the good news is that there's more space to think about more good ideas. The bad news is that part of what happens, there's nothing you can do about it, is there's people thinking about a lot of really bad ideas right now too. But here's what it comes down to. I'll list it very quickly. We got to do a lot more of 5 things to actually move us in the direction where we could ever sort of start to get close to be realistically, could we be talking about how are we going to actually manage to move to something that's a very different way of making economic decisions, something along these lines. We're going to have to rebuild a lot of tattered, torn, and weakened sort of social movements, labor movement, women's movement, civil rights movement in the United States, environmental movements. Those movements have been dramatically weakened. We're going to have to rebuild old movements, and they're going to have to be a lot more stronger. They're going to have to be a lot more powerful. We're going to have to build a bunch of new movements, Uncut, Occupy, student movement in Quebec. They're going to have to be a lot more new movements from the new generation. The old movements are going to have to be built. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it's not just building reform movements. We're going to have to create a lot more living experiments in equitable cooperation to prove that it works, to work out the kinks so we know what works and doesn't work, to basically demonstrate that, no, not only do we want to win back reforms in this system, and as long as we have to put up with it, but we can start to build sort of the beginnings of the new system and a new way of do things right in the rotting carcass of the old one. I think that's an important thing. I think you have to do both those things together. In the United States, we have to have an electoral strategy, and we are really up Schitt's Creek without a paddle right now. There's a Supreme Court case called the Citizens United case, where the Supreme Court just ruled, and you're not going to believe it. This is what they ruled. They said all laws restricting the amount of money that anybody can give to political campaigns are against the U.S. Constitution, and those laws have to be thrown out. We, the Supreme Court, have just thrown them out. And not only is anybody allowed to give as much money as they want to anybody's political campaign, guess who people are, and guess who people includes? People includes corporations. Corporations are people. Well, the amount of money that is getting thrown into political campaigns in the United States is, this decision came about 2 months before the 2010 elections. In 2 months, you could already see just how much difference it's making. Now it's been 2 years, and we have no idea just how much havoc that has created. So we have a serious problem coming up with an electoral strategy that has any chance of success in the United States right But I would point to a place like Greece and take a look at Sirte. Sirte was the coalition